A sampling there of Liberal MPs, dozens of whom spent the day meeting in a room just behind me here on Parliament Hill. Their focus, singular. Who is going to replace Justin Trudeau as leader of the Liberal Party after he stepped aside on Monday, or announced he would step aside on Monday? And how will that race unfold? And with me now to talk more about that are two Ontario Liberal MPs, Judy Sgro and Charles Sousa. Great to see you both. Thank you very much for making the time.
Glad to be here.
So the first question I think Canadians are wondering is, and I don't know what you can share, but were the rules of the leadership race essentially decided on during this meeting, Ms. Sgro?
We had a very lengthy discussion with the president of the party, and all of caucus had a chance to get up and to make suggestions, and it was a very fruitful day of 6 hours of discussions, and I think it was very positive.
Let me just quickly follow up. Do you anticipate the party will decide on those rules shortly?
Well, they need to. I mean, there is a very short time frame for this leadership campaign, so it's important that they heard from all of us today, and they will take that back to the meetings with the other members of the Commission.
What are your key priorities, Mr. Sousa, that you wanted to convey to the party's leadership about how this race should unfold?
Well, they're not just my priorities. I think they're shared priorities by Canadians as well, to ensure there's integrity in the system as we move forward. We're going to have a truncated process, which is not normal. I mean, I don't think any time in Canadian history we had to go through a process as quickly as we're doing it now. And so Canadians want to make certain that there's integrity in the system, that the process is followed in a way that protects the interests of Canadians, and that we select a strong, robust leader who's serious, who can lead this country and defend national interests.
Some of the concerns going in around exactly what Mr. Sousa is laying out were around who can essentially vote in this, and whether or not the rules would change to prevent non-citizens, basically. Do you anticipate that the leadership of the party is open to changing those kinds of rules?
Just as a reminder, after every election, Election Canada reviews its rules, and I think the party needs to do the same thing. We're about to go into a leadership, and I think it's important that they look at the rules the way they are. They were put together many years ago, and they need to be reviewed and updated to reflect what 2025 is, quite possibly. But we made all of those points today about the integrity of the system. It has to be not just perceived to be correct and transparent. We have to make sure that there's transparency and honesty throughout the process, and I think they heard our concerns today.
Is it your sense, Mr. Sousa, because you were being pretty frank about this on the way into the meeting, that they are open to making those changes? Because they had previously telegraphed to media before this caucus that they were going to keep things status quo.
No, they're very open to. They've certainly heard us loud and clear, and they have.
Consensus, do you think,
they have made no decision has been made. I'm not going to presuppose what the board's going to do, but they heard very clearly the concerns that not only that we as members have, but certainly as Canadians have, and so we want to make certain that those that have been loyal members of the party, those that have engaged with the parties over time, those that may have not renewed their membership, who want to now be part of this process, they recognize that those people are important. But they also recognize that issues of foreign interference is a real issue. An issue that is not just relevant to the Liberal Party of Canada and this particular process. It's been an issue with the Conservative Party, with a leader who's not taken his security clearance for that very reason. So we have to be mindful that we need to ensure that whoever's chosen, and this is an exciting time for Canada, to ensure that we bring forward a leader as an alternative to extremism. And there's an extremism in the parts of the Conservative Party, and for that matter in the NDP. And most Canadians, I believe, are more centric than that.
I just want to follow up on that, because I think that the Conservatives would push back against the characterization of them as extreme and point to public opinion polling, which shows a wide swath of Canadians, not just a small group of hard-right Canadians, but a wide swath of Canadians have been supportive of them over the last year to a much greater degree than your party. When you talk about moving back to the centre, can you be specific about what that means? Does it mean, for example, moving on from the consumer price on carbon? Does it mean abandoning the changes to capital gains, the inclusion rate? Like, what does it mean?
You know, the party is a very progressive party, and the Prime Minister is a very progressive individual, and he's shown a lot of integrity. A lot has been done to support Canadians: dental care, pharmacare, child care, the economy has grown tremendously over that period of time as well. And many affluent individuals have benefited from our economic growth. But we have to be mindful of ensuring that middle class citizens, that those that are had less advantages are taken care of. And that's why governments exist. And I would argue that that the neocon that's sort of developing around Canada and the world for that matter, there's some degree of frustrations. And so we have to ensure that they have a better alternative. And I think once we've finished with the leadership race that we're having here in Canada, they'll have a much more positive alternative going forward, one that unites Canada.
So let me ask you, do you agree with that sentiment, first of all, Ms. Sgro? And second of all, do you think, in all reality, your party has the ability to convince particularly middle-class Canadians, whom were with you in 2015 in great numbers, that they still should come back to you after they feel abandoned over the last few years?
Well, I think we've done a lot of excellent policies that we have brought in that have helped thousands of Canadians. For whatever reason, and there is a cycle of 10 years in, 10 years out if you're lucky to survive that long. The PM was in 9.5 years. People wanted change. And when you asked them why they wanted the change, they were just tired of the PM, but not necessarily tired of our policies. So I think going forward with new leadership, a reinvigoration of our party, that we will get a very positive response. We want to make sure that everything that we've heard today, that we're doing over the next while, is reflective of how Canadians are feeling out there, what they want to see, what they want to hear. And even if it's a short time to have this campaign, we want to take an abundance of caution to make sure that it's done properly, transparency is there, and people are confident in the process, because the person is going to be the Prime Minister. It's not just electing a leader. Even if it's for a very short time, it's the Prime Minister for a day, a week, 6 months, whatever it is until the election. So it's imperative this be done properly and that Canadians are comfortable with the process.
If I could just respectfully push back on the idea, Mr. Sousa, that it's not the policies that Canadians are upset with, it was just the person at the top. What evidence do you really have of that? Yes, people were sick of the Prime Minister, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but public opinion polling bears that out. But your party's brand is also being damaged more largely. Like, what evidence do you have that just putting a new face at the top, when you're contending with opposition parties like the Conservatives are going to throw all their money at telling people nothing has changed, what evidence do you have that you'll be able to convince them otherwise?
I mean, the biggest piece of evidence is that we are a party of over 100 years. I mean, Wilfrid Laurier was a tremendous leader, and there's been many since that have brought Canada to a position of being G7, to being prominent on the world stage, and we want to reinforce that. I mean, my priorities are pretty simple when I came back. It's to ensure that we continue having economic growth, creating good jobs, to sustain the second priority of social programs and things that matter to Canadians. And the third priority, which I think is critical here, is national unity, showing pride that Canada is not broken. Canada is a place where many have come to seek real freedom, real opportunity, as did my parents. And lastly, we have to be strong on the world stage. And I want to ensure that people feel that the next leader of Canada is not one who provides gimmicks and slogans. It's not one who's never done anything, never had a real job outside of being a career politician. We want someone who can actually stand up to the world leaders and ensure that Canada is better placed.
Just very briefly, speaking about who that leader might be, Ms. Sgro, you said this morning on your way in that you would have been supportive of Dominic LeBlanc, who announced on his way in that he was no longer doing that. Do you think there's any convincing him to come back? Because we've heard from some MPs are hopeful that be the case, or do you think it's a done deal?
Well, I'm very hopeful that he reconsiders that. It will all depend on what the Rules Committee comes up with as to where we move forward. But I think Dominic, he's a bilingual member. He's very experienced, very capable on his feet. And as we move into every day more and more challenges with President-elect Trump, I think someone like Dominic could handle him extremely well.
Mr. Sousa, very quick question to you. Have you decided who you're going to support based on I guess there's only one candidate we know of, Frank Baylis, but otherwise there's obviously wide speculation about who else might be in the race.
I'm having discussions, I think we all are, having discussions with potential candidates who are all very capable and competent and have the ability to lead this country well. I will be reflecting on those choices over time.
Okay, I'll look forward to getting the answer. Yeah, very short time when you both make the decision. Thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it. Judy Sgro and Charles Sousa.